So as we are all aware, things that are happening in the Middle East are not new or is not new. At least the recent events are not new. And so we are looking at this matter from the continuation or continuing previously, or continuation of the last week. Basically, the world feels, if you see Amir Sarfati, he is actually a believer from Israel who talks about and teaches on end time events. Of course, he is a pre-tribulation rapture proponent. But being in Israel, he has a better awareness of what is going on. And therefore, I think his statements about what is happening right now there is important. Basically, the world feels the real war is coming and it is not in Gaza. And it is very true. The real war would be between Lebanon and Israel, or Iran using some other nations to come in. Regardless, Russia, China, some of the Arab states, some of the North African Islamic states or Muslim states are positioning themselves. Certainly, Egypt and Jordan is not belligerent yet, but there are other nations, other Arab nations, as well as Middle Eastern nations that are ready to go to war. Turkey is very active. Russia has already threatened, in a sense, indirectly, and we'll see a video that about what Putin is speaking. Regardless, in all these matters, we see that something is brewing. Not just that, it's always been like that, but we are very near to something. Nearer than last week, though it is taking a slow and steady progress forward, and we should not be bluffed by the slowness of the whole thing. The fact of the matter is, it is steadily moving on ahead to some sort of event that which will be very familiar to us because we have been looking at it. It's basically, the world is basically, it feels like, I think he's talking about a feeling because he is in Israel. The fact of the matter is the Jewish people are going through precarious times. They are, in a sense, believers or non-believers regard. I think believers have much hope because they know that the Lord has already spoken about these matters. But certainly the unbelievers are in great trepidation. With all the events that have happened, we have not heard the gruesomeness of what Hamas did to the Jewish people, at least the 1500. How gruesome those deeds were, especially with respect to children, mothers, and babies. It is true that when nations go to war, events happen that is unbearable. But then when something like this happens, and that to a nation, the little purpose of these kind of events is to terrorize the nation. And effectively, Israel, in a sense, though they talk that they are still able to deal with these matters by themselves, and they are powerful enough to deal. In a sense, there is much trepidation, and they will not accept there is doubt, but there is much trepidation and fear in the hearts of people. We should not forget that in the midst of all the self-confidence that is exuded, there is much trepidation and much fear. And as you all know, the State Department has sent out a worldwide alert, and the world is in an alert and eagerly waiting to see what is going on. Now, this is a video of how the Palestinians, they responded to, or how they were reacting to what Hamas did. This was just moments after what they heard was happening in Israel. So these are the Palestinians. It is surprising how they could react to this way after many were raped, tortured, burned, and shot. And that too, these were civilians, including children, to their death, and more than 203 kidnapped. But this was the reaction in Palestine when they heard what happened. delusion of victory, but exhibition of hate. I think many of us wouldn't understand how human beings could react in this way. But from their side, they would be saying that their children and mothers and babies were killed like this several, for years. Now we are at a point where, how can we judge what is right and what is not? But when humanity is lost in an event, people are not willing to hear reason. And it's very difficult to solve a problem when people have lost humanity and reason doesn't work anymore. So we are at a point where it would be the survival of the fittest, which is both will have to go to war and find out who will last. And that is why there is thinking in many quarters that this will end up in a war and this will end up in a serious war. If that is the case, it will be fulfilling Bible prophecy as far as Ezekiel 38 is concerned. Israel announces evacuation plans for Kiryat Shimona, city north of Israel, and this is a city near the Lebanese border. And this evacuation order was given today. So they are certainly expecting that there will be some sort of war between Hezbollah in the north. U.S. is sending submarines to Scotland, and from there they are going to the Mediterranean apparently. B-1 bombers, US B-1 bombers have been sent to UK, arrived in UK a few days ago, latest deployment. The United States is really entering into this war with the intention to help Israel. At least right now, their intent is to bring some sort of a fear in Hezbollah. And there are a lot of movements between Iraq and Lebanon, and Iran, Iraq, and Lebanon, moving a huge amount of numbers of people, especially militants and Hezbollah fighters or Islamic fighters from these countries into Lebanon. A war is brewing. As soon as Gaza is attacked, probably they'll start a front from the north. Iran and Russia has asked all its citizens to leave Lebanon, and U.S. has already done that. Many nations are asking their citizens to leave Lebanon. Another indication that a northern front with a war in Israel would come about if Israel gets into Gaza. All these preparations are going on. And when a sizable amount of people gather up at a border, the nations have no other option other than to go to war. They are not going to amass a huge army or a huge number of people at the border and this walk back. Just like what Russia did with Ukraine. But 200,000 or 300,000 men were gathered at the border of Ukraine. And, they gathered so many people and military ammunitions and weapons and things of that nature. And if you look at logistic, they are not going to withdraw that back. They have to go forward. There's no other option. And we are coming to a critical mass as far as the border between Lebanon and Israel is concerned. Why am I saying this? If that is the case, and that is what we hear in the news, Ezekiel 38, it would be a stepping stone to Ezekiel 38. U.S. will forever stand with Israel, Biden says so. But I don't think the Israelis are very confident. Though Biden speaks this way, as soon as an operation starts in Gaza, the world will start standing against Israel because of all the, naturally there is going to be collateral damage. And the world has no appetite for collateral damage. Moreover, Hamas as a terrorist, they live amongst, or they have their things in their offices as well as their military installations in the midst of civilian areas. So naturally, this is going to be tough for Israel. And everybody knows this. As soon as Israel gets into Gaza, the world is going to turn against Israel. But it looks like Israelis are going to go regardless. There is no turning back. It has come to a point where there is no turning back. They will enter into Gaza. Iran is going to, under Hezbollah, is going to start a northern war, unless otherwise they are completely destroyed by US and other nations. If US is involved in it, Russia is going to enter into it. We'll look at what Putin said. This is going to be a mess pretty soon. We will see what will happen. US is sending 2,000 Marines to Israeli coast. I don't know what they're going to do. 2,000 Marines is nothing when Hezbollah has 150,000 rockets, and those are all guided rockets. They are trained at Israel. Once a war starts, it's going to be, it's going to be carnage in Israel. Iran threatens direct intervention if Israel invades Gaza. Now, this is a little bit, it's an old news, but it is not that old. It is basically after the events in Israel by Hamas. But each nation is promising the other that they are going to take action, or action is coming. Here is an interesting news, and this is important because of Isaiah chapter 17. Israel, through France, has warned Lebanon as well as Syria. And this is what they said. In a message delivered to Nasrallah, he is actually the leader of Hezbollah, and Hezbollah is in Lebanon. In a message delivered to Nasrallah from Israel's side through senior officials in the French government, Nasrallah, was warned that his joining the campaign would result in Israel even considering, in the style of the landlord has gone mad, to attack his important ally, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. And Damascus would be destroyed. That is what Israel has said. Damascus would be destroyed. Now, after this meeting, if you go back and look at Isaiah chapter 17, that is exactly what Isaiah 17 is saying. Damascus will be destroyed. Damascus is one of the oldest cities ever to be populated and still surviving. It is the oldest city. Okay? Even cities in Israel have been destroyed and then rebuilt. But Damascus have never been destroyed or rebuilt. It has been continuing on in history. And this is one promise that Isaiah the prophet gives, that Damascus will be completely destroyed. And that's exactly what Israel has said through the French government, to basically threaten Nasrallah not to get involved in this war, because Nasrallah's ally is the Syrian Assad, the leader of Syria, the president of Syria, Bashar al-Assad, is his ally. So, see, I don't think they are looking at the scriptures. Israeli government is not looking at the scriptures and saying these things. But the fact of the matter is they can't but do what is written in the scriptures. And that is what is an indication to us that what is going on right now is what is written in the Word of God, right? And these things will come about if we think that this particular train of thought is what is going to be executed. Death toll from Israeli attacks on Gaza would be unacceptable, says Putin. So that is an indication that, he is not going to tolerate, or his government is not going to tolerate what Israel is going to do in Gaza. We have to understand one thing, how much Ukraine-Russia war changed on the world. We don't have a grasp of it, but it changed the world, especially the third world and Asia, to an extent which is, it cannot be brought back to the old order that was there. Prior to the Ukraine-Russia war, Putin and Netanyahu, both of them had a very good relationship. Putin was taking care of Israel, and Israel was taking care of Putin's interest in Syria. Putin made sure that Iran wouldn't have a large base inside Syria, though Iran was an ally of Putin. Putin made sure that Iran wouldn't have a large base in Syria because, Iran is the arch enemy of Israel. And both of them did favors to each other, and they had a first line contact with each other. But as soon as the Ukraine-Russia war started, Israel was forced by the Western nations to support Ukraine. And now what has happened is Russia has basically turned against Israel. Many in those days, in the days when there's a great, interaction and comity between Israel and Russia, many were surprised to see this, and they were asking, how is Ezekiel 38 going to happen? Because Ezekiel 38 says Russia is going to come against Israel. Now it is very evident. Because Israel did not support Russia in Ukraine, and moreover, Russians have sent many Jews back, and there has been some persecution of the Jews in Russia because of the fact that Israel did not help them, or at least support them verbally, and they switched. And it was in Israel's best interest to help Putin, or at least verbally help Putin, because they knew very well that Putin was in their backyard. Effectively, Syria is controlled by Putin. But that's not what happened. And now Putin is indirectly, in his classical way, letting Israel know that, I'm not going to bear any more shenanigans in your backyard, because I'm there and I'm going to take care of it. Indirectly, that's what he's saying. Or he's going to cause trouble one way or the other. By the way, Turkey has become, it's becoming a strong enemy of Israel. I think today, one of the parliamentarians in the Turkish parliament basically said, openly said, wish Hitler had completely destroyed the Jews. And so Turkey and the nations around Israel are getting to be very animated against Israel. Now, here is what Russia is warning. Now, Putin is giving the statement, and indirectly what he's saying here is this, that in the Black Sea, he's got, these planes doing its, work. And it's got this missile, these are supersonic missiles that can hit ships in the Mediterranean. And that's what he's indirectly saying. But he tells, this is how he tells. I'll play the video. He's saying, I'm not trying to threaten, which is what exactly he's trying to do when he says that. Right? So he is speaking in Russian, but there are English subtitles to it.
Авиационные группировки в Средиземное море. Хочу сказать, это не угроза, то, что я сейчас по моему поручению военно-воздушные силы, военно-космические силы России начинают на постоянной основе патрулирование в нейтральной зоне воздушного пространства над Черным морем. И наши самолеты МиГ-31 вооружены комплексами «Кинжал». Они, как известно, имеют дальность свыше 1000 километров со скоростью 9 махов.
He's effectively saying that, the missiles, the supersonic missiles that they are carrying on planes that are patrolling the Black Sea has a range of 1,000 kilometers. And 1,000 kilometers means the U.S. Warships that are in the Mediterranean are within its range. That's what he's indirectly saying. These warship, these ships that were sent by the U.S. I think we need to understand one thing. U.S. is actually a maritime power. It's a maritime power and an aerospace power. U.S. is not effectively a land power. Now, during the Cold War time period, the U.S. had a large army. It could field 1 million men pretty soon in Europe. But that's not the case right now. So U.S. has to rely on its maritime as well as aerospace assets. And he is saying, U.S. is dragging these ships into the Mediterranean, and, my missiles are within its range to attack these ships. That's what he's indirectly saying, though he's saying, I'm not threatening. Now, see how things go. U.S. preps for the possible attack on DC with simulated incoming missiles. This is part of the world alert, right? Each nations are going through its own alert. A magnitude 4.2 earthquake in Northern California triggers shake alert in Bay Area. San Francisco is shaking, at least in a milder sense. But these areas which have earthquakes as its Achilles heels are showing its weaknesses, and they are earthquakes. And by the way, because of what is going in the Middle East, I was not able to put some of these videos. A lot of cities that are undergoing flood, literally one after the other, cities are being flooded in different parts of the world. There are other events that are going on, which is not in our purview, but, I think things are intensifying, not just wars and rumors of war. Other things are also intensifying in different areas of the world. Now, in the midst of all these things, Trump has offered to visit Israel. The former president has insisted that the war, the war will not happen if he was in office, and that is his constant refrain. Every time, that's what he says. Now, the reason why I put this up is because these are all indications of the Antichrist spirit. I'm not saying he is the Antichrist, but the spirit does certainly show off. The Antichrist spirit does certainly show off in these words. Inside the United States, now this is a UC Davis professor, Gemma DeCresto, is threatening to hunt down Jewish journalists in their homes using knife, axe, and blood emojis, and talking about their addresses being public, right? Now, the universities are thoroughly, they are going for the Palestinians and the Hamas cause. It is surprising how these are professors who are talking like this. These are the professors who are teaching others. And they are the ones who are talking in this way. One group of people, and this is what she says in her, she's a UC Davis assistant professor of American Studies, undergraduate faculty advisor. One group of people we have easy access to in the US is all the Zionist journalists who spread propaganda and misinformation. They have houses with address, kids in the school. They can fear their bosses, but they should fear us more. And then she puts the emojis of knife, axe, and 3 drops of blood. So it is, this is a bloodthirsty cult, and the people are of this kind too, if you really look at it. Unfortunately, right? They want to kill, maim, they look like civilized people, but their heart is filled with violence. This is actually, he's a cardiovascular surgeon in Liverpool University, and see that death to Israel, right? Death to Israel is what he has put up. So they are very bold. These are educated people. So education is not going to make man better. In fact, education is going to make them even wilder, it looks like. Right? Dr. Alam, shockingly, has a death to Israel on his IG feed. Right? This is how they look at these matters. And these people, they live in the West. German Chancellor hides in a shelter during rocket scare. Now, this happened while in Israel. German Chancellor visited Israel. And while he was boarding the plane, Hamas sent in rockets, as usual in the night, into Tel Aviv airport, to the surrounding areas. And they had to all be falling prostrate on the ground and hiding themselves. Immediately, world leaders and these elites are on their belly on the ground. And it's a surprising thing to see. Right. Now, I just put this in because, this issue is also looming in nations in the West, in the East. This is about LGBTQ marriage, marriage rights in India. Okay. They are going through the courts. They want the courts to ask the legislature to legislate this, to give them the privilege to marry. And India being a big country, with about 1.1 to 1.2 billion people, if this becomes a right in the country, And, in its present condition, the case didn't go through, or the judges basically said, we cannot force the legislator to legislate marriage in this way. But they are trying hard, and eventually they will, because that's what we see in other countries. And the words of our Lord is should be very instructive here, that it'll be days like the days of Lot and Noah. In the days of Noah, it was the same thing. Noah so also was in the days of Lot. This is how the world is, or, at least as we look in, a lot of other things going on. What I wanted to do was to, give a flavor of things. The fact that Israel is sitting there precariously, not knowing what is going to happen. They know what they are going to do, and they cannot turn back. They have to go into Gaza. They cannot turn back. And Iran is amassing a large number of people, especially militants and fighters, at the border of Lebanon and Israel. Israel has asked a northern city to evacuate, that borders Lebanon. US and Russia, the West and Russians are talking at each other, though mildly. The world is basically standing to watch what's going on. And we believers are looking at to see if this is Ezekiel 38 and is Isaiah 17 going to happen or what, because all those things are spoken. Now in Ezekiel 38, Turkey, Russia, Libya, and two more other nations, Iran and Syria, including Libya and Sudan. Sudan will also come. These 5 nations will come together against Israel, and they will rout Israel. That's what is being said there. But God, the God of Israel, will actually kill these people in Israel by earthquakes and great calamities. That is the promise given to Israel, but Israel will be severely damaged. Now, it is said that after the Ezekiel 38 war, a man will come with peace, and that man will be the Antichrist. So that is how the order of things is, or should be, or that is what we are expecting, or that, if you ask me personally, that is what I'm looking. But in the meanwhile, let us make sure that, remember what the Lord said, that all over the world, there'll be trouble and trial. All over the world. And therefore, let us be prepared in faith to face the trouble and trial. We cannot pray the trouble and trial stop. It's not going to happen. We have to overcome the trouble and trial. We should not be surprised at, if we read, let us read Peter, 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 12. The apostle is saying, we shouldn't be surprised either at the trouble and trial that would come by our way. Not just this time, at any time in our lives, we shouldn't be surprised. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 12 onwards. Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal among you, which comes upon you for your testing, as though some strange things have happened to you. But to the degree that you share the sufferings of Christ, keep on rejoicing, so that also at the revelation of his glory, you may rejoice with exaltation. At the revelation of his glory, you may rejoice with the exaltation. So these are all the sufferings of Christ, in the sense that the Lord has already proclaimed it. The Lord said that the whole world will be tried and tested. A time like no other time in the world history would come upon the people of this world. Especially believers would be tested. Believers will be persecuted. Now, in these events right now, what is going on, probably we may not be affected deeply, but our lives may be affected because of these events, because these are worldwide events that are happening. Now, we shouldn't be surprised at these things. Instead, we should be prepared with faith, a faith that overcomes, a faith that has a revelation to see, a faith that knows things, a faith that trusts, in the Lord, a faith that looks into the coming of the Lord and finding comfort in it. You know, we don't know what is going to happen. We don't know what are the repercussions to the things that would come about because of these kind of wars. You know, America may be destabilized. You don't know what is going on. In Sweden, as part of all these things that are happening in Sweden, 2 Swedish people were gunned down by some Muslim, right? Shouting Allahu Akbar. Now, these kind of things can happen around us. I don't know if you saw the rally, the Palestinian rally in Dallas. It was a huge rally. It was a huge rally in Dallas. The downtown was all filled out, that street, at least the street that they were walking. That street is all filled up. Okay? So, just like the Jewish people are in trouble right now, they are afraid to go out of their houses. They are afraid to go out of their homes. Many are still shocked by what they saw and by what they heard. Now, those things are far away from us. But what the Jews suffer, the world will suffer. That is how things are. What happened to the Jews will happen to the world. So, in the midst of this, let us be, we shouldn't be overconfident in ourselves, but we should be confident in the Lord.